Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a review of two glass pads. I have the updated Cerapad Kin, which is of course ceramic coated, and I have the Project Arctica, which is a translucent pad with a little bit of a texture, which is quite different than most glass pads. And you can see the pad is translucent. So under this, I do have the Super Bings Memoria pad that I am testing currently. But this video is again going to focus on the glass pads, the Project Arctica, the Cerapad Kin, you guys already know I enjoy. I'll go over some of the updates that I at least feel with the pad. But the Project Arctica pad right now is one of my favorite combos, actually, paired with my new custom G303 from Nacho Customs. Let's get into it. Getting to the Arctica pad first, this happens to be one of my favorite combos right now, paired with the G303, and I am using the Corepad Air Skates on my 303 on this particular surface. I'll get you guys a little bit closer to the pad so that you can see it does have a little bit of a texture on the surface itself. It is nothing that you're going to feel on your hand. It is not abrasive in any way, but when you are moving your mouse around, it will give you a little bit of a tactility, kind of letting your subconscious have an extra awareness of how much speed you're using or outputting and where your cursor is on the screen. It is a nice thing and a variation in the glass market right now that we don't really get from all the other glass surfaces like the Atlas, the Skypad, the Superglide, and others. This happens to be a very unique pad in the market right now and gets a step closer to what I personally used to use back in the day of professional CS. I can't tell you guys how many pro matches I have played in Cal Invite on the Ratpads GS. Yes, this is literally what we used to use back in the day. You can see it is not large in any way, shape, or form. But for something like CS, you were very controlled holding angles and having very controlled spray. It wasn't really anything that affected us back in the day. The Ratpads GS, if we could get this sort of a texture on a glass surface, I'm telling you guys, it would be a beautiful thing, and it would be a beautiful way for you guys that haven't experienced a textured hard surface like the Ratpads to understand and test how that tactility would affect your movement, your cursor, your tracking, or your controlled aim in games like tac shooters. You can hear a little bit of that surface on the Arctica when you just grind your fingers over the pad. It is not as extensive as something like the Ratpads. When you are moving your hand on the Ratpads, though, again, because it is a hard surface, you don't have any abrasiveness on your skin, which is also a nice thing when you are comparing something like this to pads with texture in the hybrid variant, etc. The Ratpads is such a beautiful pad that a lot of people are, again, not going to be able to experience today. It has just low initial friction, low dynamic friction, but when you really do get to it, you get a little bit of that extra control from the actual textured surface on the hard surface. I think that's one of the beautiful things about it. And that's something that you are able to gain a little flavor of on the Arctica pad, which is why it hits kind of a little nostalgic note for me. It just feels more like the pads that a lot of us used to use back in the day. So overall, how does that affect the speed of the pad? Initial friction is still pretty low, but maybe higher than other glass pads like we mentioned earlier. The dynamic friction is low, so you get this beautiful, open, airy feeling movement, kind of like a speedier dynamic friction. And then static friction, it does get to the point of where you can have very controlled movements with never feeling wiggly. And I never felt wiggly on this pad on dynamic, static, or slower type movements. So in my opinion, I think this pad performs extremely well. And again, it's one of my favorite pairings right now. It works for me on all of my 3395 sensors as well as my Logitech sensors on my 303 and my Superlight. I have not had any issues in that regard, but again, I did not test this on some of the older sensors, and primarily that's because all of my mice right now really do incorporate a 3395 sensor. My wired Vaxi mice had no issue on this pad in terms of tracking, and I think that the translucent nature of the pad really is cool, especially if you have a desktop surface that you might like to show off, or you can always put a cloth type variant under the pad and get whatever design you want. So it looks great on stream. The size was fine for me. And the variation that you get from other glass pads, I think the Arctica pad is a pretty stellar pad that I perform very well on. So for that reason, it's definitely going to get a recommendation at $65 for me if you're looking for something that has a little tiny bit more control and that nice tactile feedback that you will get with your skates rubbing over that texture. I think it's a great pad. I recommend it. Getting to the Cerapad Kin from TJ Exclusives, this is going to be more so an update to my original review. I love the pads that TJ Exclusives has come out with. The original Cerapad was very fast. The Cerapad Kin took it down quite a bit in terms of speed, and the Cerapad Kin in this new color iteration does have a little bit of a varied texture, a varied coating compared to the original Cerapad Kin. And I do like this more than the original. I particularly like the color variants as well. This one is the white in the iridium. It's 505 by 405 in terms of its size. And this, again, is the white, but it does come off kind of like as a very nice light gray, which I think is just a beautiful color. I wish we had more mice in that color. I wish we had more pads in that color. I think it just goes well with so many different things, especially, of course, the Nacho Customs G303 that I have sitting on top of it. The Cerapad Kin is a glass pad, but it is ceramic coated, and it does provide more control than what a lot of people are going to be expecting for a glass pad. And I think a lot of people need that control. If you're in that camp, rest assured, the Cerapad Kin is a great performing, controlled glass pad. The initial friction is greater than glass pads, again, like the SkyPad, the Pulsar, as well as the Razer Atlas. But when you do start getting to dynamic friction is a little bit higher as well. So you'll feel a little bit more controlled with your glides, and static friction for tack shooters in particular. Those slower movements are probably the most controlled out of all of the glass pads that I have reviewed. Now, even though you get that additional control, how does it feel compared to the more open nature of most glass pads? I think it feels great, but it definitely depends on your pairing of skates. If you're somebody who likes that additional control in your cloth pads, I would definitely recommend you trying a Cerapad Kin if you want to try a hard surface that has great durability and great build quality. For sure, I would recommend trying the Cerapad Kin because you're going to get that controlled variant. So if you're somebody who's tried a hard pad like a SkyPad or a Pulsar Superglide and you're like, oh my God, I just cannot control my mouse movements, I would kind of point you towards the direction of the Cerapad Kin. For me, I'm more of a guy who is more so putting hours in on more balanced pads, more speedier pads. So for me, it takes a while to warm up to a controlled pad like the new Ninjutsu NPC in Artisan 0 and the Cerapad Kin. But once I get warmed up to it, I perform very well, and it's just something that once you're used to the level of speed and you don't really have to think about it, and your sensitivity gets adjusted, it really is something that performs very well. It's something that I recommend. I recommended it in my first video, and I definitely recommend it again. It has consistently gotten a thumbs up from me. It just, again, you need to be aware of the fact that this is going to be a different camp than most other glass pads. It is more controlled. It is slower. And if you are looking for that, again, thumbs up from me on the TJ Exclusive Cerapad. And I really do enjoy the new colors. So I'm excited to see what TJ Exclusives cooks up in the future. I think they're on the right path, providing different variants in very large sizes. And I like the fact that they're providing an alternative to other things on the market. It's nice to give more people more options, especially if that speedy variant does not work for you. So great hard surfaces from a lot of different companies right now in the middle of 2023. So that is it for this one, guys. I have more IEM videos coming soon. We're testing, of course, more mouse pads. We have a few new mice. And certainly I'll try to get into some of the evolution and changes in the Pulsar X2. There's just a lot that I have right now that I'm testing, going back and forth, but I promise we'll get some more content very soon. That is it for this one, though, guys. I hope it helped. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.